Why don't we take a moment before we get into our reading? We're still going with our Temple of the Living God exploration, but let us settle deeply in the complete acknowledgement, acceptance, recognition, admitting that only the truth is true, that God is all, and that's right here where I am. And this is why it serves us to be so real. And those who aren't, well, we can't do anything about that. Spiritual bypassing is rife. Be real. Be here. Knowing truth. Live knowing truth. And importantly, the truth that is the unopposed, unchallenged, imperturbable, impenetrable fact that the one substance that is consciousness, that is God, that is life, that is love, is the all of all, and there is nothing else. Now, when we say there is nothing else, that's not calling what you really think is something by another name, but the recognition that is spiritual truth, aka reality, is the absolute fact that God is all. Consciousness is the substance, is the activity, and is the supply. Let's take a moment here in this joyous recognition. That means I can never not only have a problem, but be without everything needed, wanted, desired for my fulfilment, which of course is the purpose of life. Let us sit here, stand in this recognition, and then we'll get into our reading. So we'll take 20 or so minutes to review the next part of this chapter, and then we'll open this up for questions. Where we ended, we must face these falsifications squarely. This is known as fear no evil, and of course we can fear no evil because there is none. What is illusion is illusion. That's why it is know the truth. And you hear this so repetitively. Know the truth. That sets you free. Know what you are. That is your freedom established already. You don't make it so. It is in the acceptance, claiming, acknowledgement, and recognition of what is that liberation reveals itself and consumes what seemed to be something else, rendering it eternally nothing. What seems so real to the mortal mind has no reality whatsoever in truth. So we must face these falsifications squarely, just like a mistake in a maths equation, because we're not clear about what the truth is. It's just unawareness, a lack of truth awareness replaced by truth. And we must go all the way in our perception of that which is true. This is a very significant point that we so often speak to. Go all the way. Absolute is absolute, it's not partial. It doesn't have a competitor, an opposition, an opponent. It doesn't face challenges. It can't be challenged. So we go all the way in our perception of that which is true rather than of that which appears to be true and is not. We know that a mirage may present a false picture of a lake, and this apparent lake may be right in the path of our car. We know we are going to have to come to this supposed lake. We don't stop the car. We don't turn around and go back, and neither do we take a detour. We face this mirage that seems to be a lake. We drive right up to it, and when we have firmly faced it and gone right up to it, we find there is no lake at all. That's the nature of a mirage. In fact, there is not so much as a drop of water in our path. But best of all, we know that never was there a lake there. So that's just a simile, similar. But it serves to illustrate the absolute nothingness of memory and old age, as we talked about in the last session. It's necessary to face these falsifications and recognize that they are nothing but mirages, illusions with no substance, no activity, no form, and no life, because the truth is true. Because the truth is, nothing else is. There is no such thing as babyhood, childhood, youth, middle age, or old age. There is no age. This is a word that should be omitted from our vocabulary, but we don't have to pick and choose with the dictionary. We just chuck it all out. The word is God, and apart from which there isn't another. One substance, one supply, and one activity, which is how we have dominion, how we can know ourselves in perfect, eternal fulfilment, everlasting. Let's have another example here. This is from the author. Recently, I've learned that the Eastman Kodak Company, in collaboration with another large corporation, has now a marvelous process of photography. In this process, they can photograph the bud of a rose, but the finished photograph shows the full-blown rose rather than the bud. And this should really speak to us. It is at least some proof that nothing comes into being, nothing goes out of being. One day, they will be able to take a picture of a seemingly withered rose, and this picture will still show the ever perfect, ever fresh and new, full-blown beautiful rose. Let us consider just what this means and all that it means in our contemplation, because this is everything. This is how we live truthful being. Know the substance and supply and activity of life. Know omnipresence. Live in omnipresence. Live in omniscience. Live in omnipotence. This is not visible to the so-called human eye, but is visible when our eyes have been opened. When we know that consciousness is all, that's visible. It means that right where the baby body appears to be, there is the eternal body, which is forever at the very peak of its completeness in every way. You are at the peak of your completeness in every way now. It means that right where it seems there is an aging or aged body, or a sick body, or a dying body, or a diseased body, there is the eternal body, which can never be less or other than the eternal body, which remains forever at the very peak of its perfection, freshness, and newness. That's what omnipresence means. The one complete, perfect substance everywhere, at all times, unopposed. It means that right here and right now, the perfect body is the body you have and are is gloriously perfect, new and fresh, constantly, without interruption. There isn't interruption in omnipresence. There isn't interruption or interference in omnipotence. Nothing can interfere with omniscience. Omniscience doesn't have a bad day, make mistakes. If that were the case, we would probably experience more planets falling out of the sky. But do we? Do we live in fear that the galaxy is going to suddenly become disharmonious? You never even give it a thought, do you? Can you can you just be open to the realization that you are omniscience itself? You have never lacked or wanted for anything. Because of what you do know, you actually already know you are one. As I often say, you do know what you are, you just don't realize what you are not. And don't bother with what you are not. It runs interference and prevents you from realizing you are tuned in. You've never not been tuned in. There's no such thing as unawake. There might be such thing as unaware. You are awake, you are alive, and because of that fact, because of the fact that you have awareness and consciousness, you already are fully established in and as the entirety of eternality and infinity. Sometimes, when we are in illumination, we see the body. We see light. We see things differently, very differently. It very much like the parable of the illumined Christ Jesus. No longer Jesus, but very evident as Christ, as light, illuminated in illumination. A Course in Miracles speaks to this also, doesn't it? So many of you have come through that pathway. That you may start to see light where there seemed like there were edges once. But none of this need grab our attention. We're not interested in the highs of what so many get caught up in mystical experiences. Rubbish. Let it point deeper. We must go all the way. There's no partial in absolute, is there? Absolute is absolute. Knowing truth means you know nothing else. Everything else that once seemed to be something is consumed in the truth and therefore was never anything. Literally, the former things pass away. So sometimes when we are in illumination, we see the body. It may be the body of a so-called infant or the body of one who seems to be mature or perhaps aging or aged. No matter how this body that we see may appear to be to the unillumined sense, in illumination we always see the perfect body at the very peak of its perfection. Why don't we judge from appearances? Why do we judge righteous judgment instead? Because one is working with and from the very principle and law of life, and the other isn't. Judging from appearance is forever wrong. Interpretation is forever wrong. Judge righteous judgment. I've never seen a baby body, a child body, an aging or aged body when I was in illumination. Always illumined consciousness reveals the eternal immutable body, and always it is revealed as it is. Never is it revealed as immature or past maturity. It makes no difference whether or not the body I see is supposed to be the body of a baby, a child, or one is supposed to be aged. In illumination, we see the body as it eternally is. Consciousness, light. Awareness is light. We live in light to know light, to know that all is light. Many so-called healings have taken place when suddenly the body of the one who has asked for help appears right within, and as the consciousness, And this body is perceived in all its wonderful perfection and beauty. Of course, I never try to visualize the body, and we never try. To do anything as foolish as that would be diametrically opposite to the basic premise of the ultimate, of the absolute. It is just that someone who has called for help will suddenly be visible. There is nothing supernatural or mysterious about this experience. Normal, natural. I don't regard it as a mystical experience. It is all normal and natural. That's why we so often say, be real. Be right here where I am, real. We want to know the truth tangibly, real, or else what use is it? We're promised that the truth is a very real and present help, and it is. It's not woo-woo. I've simply been mistaken about what I am, and I already have access to my inheritance, which is perfect, whole, and complete, abundant, in the way that everyone wants abundance, beyond your wildest imaginings. And the wonderful aspect of this experience is that generally when this takes place, there is what the world of appearance calls a healing. So when it looks like there's some kind of miracle, which is just involuntary and natural and normal in truth, this brings us to an important aspect of our fulfillment of purpose. Whenever we contemplate, it is well to realize that our contemplation is the fulfillment of a glorious purpose. This does not mean that we contemplate with an objective in consciousness. This is really vital, and we'll get into this in our questions. We do not contemplate for the purpose of accomplishing something or of changing something. We do not contemplate from the standpoint of the fallacy that some purpose will be fulfilled through our contemplation. Rather, we contemplate knowing that every purpose is constantly fulfilled and that our contemplation is merely the consideration of this fact. Fulfillment of purpose does not mean that there is an unfulfilled purpose. Rather, it means that we are the constant fulfillment of whatever our purpose is at the moment. There is quite a difference in contemplating for the purpose of accomplishing something and contemplating for the sheer joy of perceiving that every purpose, or even some specific purpose, is constantly and eternally fulfilled. In this way, we realize that our contemplation is the omniactive mind, which is God in action, constantly fulfilling its purpose in being and in being omni-action. Above all, we contemplate in the full awareness that everything already is and every activity is already going on. We often refer to this as knowing it is done. The kingdom is finished. There is a vast and significant correction here for many. I'm not ever asking for anything, but recognizing the eternal presence of omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence. It is done. Consciousness is whole. I am the answer. I am never partial. I am never facing a problem. There is nothing insurmountable. There is no such thing. And it is when we know completeness that we experience completeness. And of course, it's joyful to contemplate completeness, wholeness, perfection. Now, let us continue with our consideration of the eternal, perfect body. We know that the body consists of eternal, perfect, living, intelligent, loving consciousness. We also know that it exists as the fulfillment of a universal as well as a specific purpose. But perhaps we wonder about those aspects of the body that are called organs, cells, atoms, etc. We may wonder about their activity and whether this activity is also a fulfillment of purpose. All activity is the fulfilment of purpose. This is why there is activity. This is why God is omniaction everywhere and eternally. Now, there's no time as such and space, but there is omniaction, the one eternal, complete consciousness, omniactive, in omnipresent, omnipotent omniscience. Tomorrow we'll get into aspects of the body that we call organs, cells, atoms, etc. But let's leave it here for today. Let's leave it here and then we can get into some questions.